Well, good afternoon. Welcome to a special edition of the NFF Connect series. I'm Ian Bennett, and I'm the National Local Assistant State Team Coordinator for the National Fallen Firefighters Foundation. And thanks for joining us today, and appreciate you spending a little time with us for this special edition here. Um, the Fallen Firefighters recently partnered with Oscilloscope, a producer of the movie Silo, and the producers are donating a portion of the proceeds to the National Fallen Firefighters Foundation for this movie. So the movie's about a rescue of a teenager trapped in a silo. And if you haven't seen the trailer, we'll take about 2 minutes here on the trailer so you can see what the movie's about.
My dad used to say that we work in acres, not hours. He was proud of that. Let me say this is for me. This is what I want to do.
How y'all doing?
Every day's a new blessing. Bye to you.
He's a good kid. He's just a kid. Takes a little while.
Wait for the transition.
This is mean, man. Your dad will love that. I don't know about that.
Hey, boys. I'll need you out here.
Been five's gone sour.
Do y'all do that a lot?
No, just for newbies.
I want to know why. Something so selfless and something so simple can go south so quick.
Shut up! Shut it off! Shut it off!
There's been an accident.
Code 3, 1024.
That's 1.5 million pounds of corn in there. There's a lot of pressure on that kid's lungs.
Standard procedure's gonna kill that kid!
Bring my son back to me.
And we, Fallen Firefighters, truly appreciates the efforts of the producers in donating the money. So one of the things we wanted to do today and tie into the release of that movie, which was just a week or two ago, was we were fortunate we have with us retired Fire Chief Greg Hickman from the Neosho Fire Department. And he experienced a line of duty death, not in a grain bin fire, not necessarily the same type of engulfment, but one that we'll talk about here today. And then we want to continue with the Connect series, and Chief is going to tell us a little bit about what happened that day, what he went through as the fire chief and incident commander on the scene, and then some lessons learned on what happened with that. So, Chief, thank you very much for taking the time and sharing with us today. So,
yeah. Thank you for the opportunity.
a little bit about Chief Hickman. Retired Fire Chief Greg Hickman from the Neosho Fire Department. He retired in August of 2010 after 37 years of service, serving positions of engineer, captain, deputy chief, and chief of department. He's been very active in the wildland community since 1994 as a firefighter and an instructor, and he currently serves as the operations chief for Newton County Emergency Management. And a little bit about the incident. So on November 7th, 2005, at 3:24 in the afternoon, the Neosho Fire Department was dispatched to a grain bin fire at a livestock feed company for a reported silo fire. Initial units reported nothing showing from a 100-foot tall grain storage structure. After meeting with the plant manager, it was determined that wheat hulls were on fire in one of the grain bins. However, the number of fires was not actually known, as there were 4 separate bins. Access to the grain bins was via a conveyor belt, which is basically a virtual one-person elevator. And during suppression efforts, firefighter Tim Hardy was killed as he was ascending the elevator. So again, thank you very much, Chief. Truly appreciate your time today.
Like I said, thank you for the invitation and the opportunity to talk about our incident.
As usual with these, if you have questions, comments, obviously the videos are and the microphones are muted for the number of people. You can go to the chat function. Those will come, questions, comments will come straight to me, and time permitting, I'll get them to the chief so we can get those answered. So Chief, we're going to start with pretty much how we do on every single one of these, as you've seen. Tell us about Firefighter Hardy. What do you want people to know about him? Who was he? So,
Well, Tim was a young man. He started with the fire department back in 1994, thereabouts. He always wanted to be a firefighter. His uncle was a firefighter captain on our department. And after he left the department, well, that opened up for Tim to come online with the guys. He was a young man. He was raised in the country. He worked as a truck driver, worked in a factory for a while. He was a welder. He worked in an excavation company and as a volunteer with the fire department. After he was hired with the fire department, he continued to work with one of his fellow firefighters in an excavation company. It seemed like he always wanted to be a firefighter, and he was dedicated. He was ambitious. He was always wanting to improve himself and in everything that he did. Like I said, he was a volunteer 6 years before he became full-time. So he was active with our community for about 12 years with our fire department. He was firefighter 1, firefighter 2, hazmat awareness operations. He had his associate's degree, trained in confined space. You always get these individuals on the department that you always wish you had a whole bunch of them. Well, I don't know if I could have handled a whole bunch. He liked working with the equipment. He was always making sure that the equipment was ready to go, properly maintained. He was one of those individuals, we always use this, if it ain't broke, don't fix it, but he liked to take a closer look at it. He was dedicated to the department, and to the personnel and the guys he worked with. If you asked him to do something, you never had to ask twice. He was always willing to do it. Sometimes overly ambitious about it, but he was always there. I just can't explain it, but firefighters are like that. Once you get it in your blood, you can't get it out. It's always there. About 2002, he married a young lady named Misty. Went on to become a father. Not only right off the bat, he had 4 stepsons, but he and Misty started a family with 2 daughters, both of which, in fact, one of them this year is graduating high school. The other one had graduated a couple of years or last year, before she moved on. But after he married, just like any firefighter, and a lot of firefighters, they're 24 hours on and 48 hours off. So you always got to have another job. And now, like, he did work with one of his fellow firefighters with his excavation company. The family, the boys and the girls, they ranged everywhere from 2 to 17 years old when he passed away. He's just an outstanding young man with the department. I don't know what else I can, other than being a father and a son and a grandson and a husband. It's just a typical ambitious and energetic young firefighter. And I guess that's about all I can say right now.
All righty, thanks. Tell us a little about the day incident. What happened? What led up to it?
No, it was on November the 7th. It's just about like any other November day here in the Ozarks. It was sunny. It wasn't really warm, probably on the 50 degrees or so. Wasn't much wind. That time of, it's that time of the year when people are getting ready for the holidays, Thanksgiving, Christmas coming up. And of course, you've got birthdays and anniversaries and everything else going on. Not a whole lot of activity during the first part of the shift, and this all came in about noon. The department, we have it's a little bit about the department itself is the city of Neosho at the time was about 11,000 population. It operates out of 2 fire stations. The area around Neosho is part of the Neosho Area Fire Protection District. So it's basically 2 departments in one. The Fire Protection District is just a 3-person board. No personnel or anything like that, but it contracts with the city of Neosho on an annual basis. The district provides equipment. That equipment can be used at the disposal of the city at any time they need it. So they have a wide variety, basically pumpers, tankers, tenders, if you want to call them. Rescue equipment. The city had an aerial at that time. The city also had 3 engines that was still in service. Population-wise, with the city and the district is probably just under 20,000. Covers about 92 square miles. So we get a large variety of everything from confined space, first responder calls, just major structural fires. The mill itself is located outside the city. It's about 3 miles of, as a straight line from either one of the 2 stations the city has. Since this incident, the Fire Protection District has built another station dedicated to another firefighter who passed away. But the new station is about 1.5 miles, 2 miles from the location of this incident. But it's not a big department. At the time, I think we had like 27 people. We had like 6 or 8 paid per call volunteers, we call them, but they were paid per call. Run about, at that time, about 1,200 runs a year. It's not a great big department, but we kept busy. The day, like I said, it wasn't a very busy day. I had went over to City Hall, do some paperwork and stuff, and I was there when the initial call come in and reported the fire in a silo at Raglan Mills, which, like I said, is about 3 miles from downtown. We'd had a history of the fires at that location. Back in 2001, around August, we responded to a fire in one of the bins. At that time, that particular fire, it was a bin of dried molasses. It was part of the feed supplement that they added to the cattle feed. About 3,000 or about 3/4 full, which put it about 30 foot from the top of the bin, which is about 70 feet up to the top level. On that incident, we hand hoisted a 3-inch line up and threw a cellar nozzle in the top of it because there's no way to get into the bins. They're just too tall. There's no interior ladders or anything like that for these incidents. The bin themselves, there's no external ladders or manways or anything on them. You have to go up the man lift on the inside of the main plant, go up to the top, and then cross over a manway between the 2 the larger bill or the mill and the smaller bin. You have to cross a manway. And then at the top of the bins, there's openings where you can look down and see, inside of what, but usually whenever it's full of smoke, you can't see anything anyway. The first one, like I said, we hoisted a 3-inch hose up, threw a cellar nozzle on it, and basically we flooded the bin. We put about 41,000 gallons of water in it. So that's about the only way we could extinguish the fire. Like I said, the city did have an aerial at that time. It was a 75 foot, so it wouldn't reach the top. So the only way we could get to the top was through the man lift. But that was in August. Again, in October of the same year, we were called back on another incident. fact is, that probably the same bin after we flooded it. We just didn't do a good enough job, and there was still some heat, residual heat in there, and it ignited again. This time we spent 3 days. It ended up that the mill had to call in a millwright. They come up, brought up a crane where they could have access to the outside of the tower or the outside of the bin. Ended up cutting holes in the outside of the bin with torches and stuff. The molasses that had been in there and gotten wet just basically hardened up to sugar, stuck to the sides and everything else, and they couldn't get it out. The mill company, they brought in an explosive technician, created carbon dioxide bombs and pipes filled with carbon dioxide, would get into the product and then release the carbon dioxide in the explosion type manner to break the stuff loose to where they could get it off the sides of the bin. So yeah, we did have a little bit of a history with the mill. I might add, we also at the time inside the city, we had a major manufacturer of chairs, and they had another silo, or they had a silo also. It was about 75 foot tall, but they captured all of their sawdust and wood shavings and chips and stuff, and then they fed it into this silo. And then they fed it out of the bottom into a boiler system that they use for heat, for dry killing the lumber, the material that they used in manufacturing the chairs. And then they also used some for generating electricity for the plant. I can't remember how many calls we made to that particular silo and that incident, or a number of incidents. We knew what a silo would do because we lit that thing up. I don't know how many times, looked like a Roman candle with fire and flames and sparks and everything coming out of the top of it, and tons and tons of sawdust that we'd emptied out after we flooded it. The plant, they did have a confined space incident involving their own personnel inside to that silo. And eventually they, with production the way it is, cheaper to buy outside resources instead of, or outside material than it is to manufacture your own. They ended up taking that silo completely out, which was a great thing for our fire department because it cut down a lot of our fire runs and a lot of problems we had. But yeah, back to the mill though, that particular day, minimum manning for the department is 6 people, 3 at each station. Initial response on that alarm counted for 4 apparatus. 2 of them were engines, and then 2 mobile water supplies. I don't know exactly where everybody's from. I'm used to saying tankers and tenders and all of that. I know if I said a tanker out west, I'd be shocked. So, but we just call them mobile water supplies. And then a chief officer. Units were dispatched out of the 2 stations. Automatic mutual aid was requested from a volunteer department north or west of us, which is the Seneca Area Fire Protection District, for water supply. Seneca is about 8 miles, or Seneca Rural is about 8 miles. Their station is in a little community called Racine. So we had what we felt was enough equipment responding till we find out what we have. The deputy chief, my deputy chief, was the first one to arrive on the scene. He got there just a little bit after 1, I think it was 13:01. Yeah, when he arrived, and the other apparatus were right behind him. All they had was just some light smoke, or that's what they reported anyway. It was just light smoke coming from the top of the tower or the mill. The mill people, he contacted the mill people and asked what, basic questions, what do we got? They thought it was, they didn't know exactly. They thought it was in possibly 2 bins, but they couldn't tell. They knew for sure they had something, but there was like 5 bins inside of that silo of 100 foot. They had wheat holes, they had soy holes, they had urea. And he asked for, MSDS sheets on it. They said they didn't have them at that time. But they did say that the wheat holes, they had about 75,000 pounds of product inside of that bin. Due to the nature of the fire, being a confined space and knowing that it's a mill, it's an old mill. It was built back in the 30s. So there's a lot of mill dust. So you have to take in consideration a dust explosion, if this thing blows out or gets into the processing, so you have to think about that. So the deputy chief, he said, everybody full bunkers, SCBAs, trying to protect the personnel as much as we could. As other equipment and people started coming in, one of the engineers, he was assigned for accountability. One of the captains was assigned to be a safety officer. Like I said, there was no outside access to this bin, so the only way was to go up this belted man lift to get to the top of the silo. Initially, my deputy chief, he called for an 1 3/4 line to be pulled into the mixing room, which is down at the bottom, and it's inside the main plant. It's adjacent to the bin itself. Called for an 1.5 inch line in there in case they did have something blow out on the bottom. It's inside the mixing room. Then he also asked for another line to be pulled, and the crews, they asked that a piercing nozzle be put on that one. Since we were dealing with a metal bin, if push comes to shove, we could just beat the metal bin to death or shove a piercing nozzle inside of it, at least give us some water on this thing. At the time, we didn't have any infrared or IR cameras on the department. So like in the past, the deputy chief, he called for a standby driver, off-duty personnel that comes to the station to man the station while the other ones are out, to respond with the city ladder truck. Here again, that ladder truck was only 75 foot. He knew that it wasn't going to be long enough to reach the top, but like in the past fires, at least we might be able to find where the level, how full, how high up that fire might be, or where the heat might be on the outside of the bin to give us some idea. A ladder truck got there at 11:24 or 13:24, 1:24, excuse me. The deputy chief, he requested a couple of firefighters to go to the top of the bin to, see if they could find out exactly which bin, so they could position a ladder truck, where it could reach whichever side it needed to be on. See if they could find out how much product or what the level was inside. Tim, and our training officer, volunteered for the assignment to do the investigation. They headed off, they went into the main plant. Inside the plant, that's where you find the man lift, which is, it's a 16-inch belted conveyor belt, if you want to call it that. It did have a fixed ladder on the side of it that goes from the top to the bottom, but it's a vertical climb, it's straight up. And as you're going up if you have to go up the external ladder, you go through several floors or several different ladders or levels. And as you get those levels, there's a platform that you have to step off to and move around and twist. Like I said, we're dealing with a plant that was built back in the 1930s. So this thing is over 70 years old. And it was almost like confined spaces trying to climb up that ladder, because you got iron and structural support members, that are real close, and it just wasn't made for room. But as you went up if you went up the ladder, it'd take quite a while to get up there. And dealing with the other incidents, firefighters were familiar with the operation, or familiar with the man lift, because we'd used it before on those other two incidents. I'm not for sure if Tim was one of those individuals or not, but during those two incidents and being 3 days on the scene at that one, we put a lot of people up and down on that lift. Basically, just the only way that we could get up there. When they got inside, one of the mill operators and one of the mill employees, he provided Tim and the training officer information about the operations of the lift. Where you stand on a platform and then you have a rope to turn it on and turn it off, and you hold the rope as you go up. And if you get in a problem, you're supposed to be able to shut it off. And whenever you get to the top, you stop it, you step off the man lift, and it only could handle one person at a time. So the training officer had to stay at the bottom along with the other mill employee. Tim was wearing his full protective clothing. SCBA had a manually operated pass device. One of the things that happened was he didn't activate the pass device. But Tim traveled to the top of the lift on the man lift, and while our training officer waited down below. After a minute, the man lift stopped, and the training officer and the second employees, they started looking to see if there was a problem, because they didn't get any information about Tim making the top. But the platform that you step onto to ride up wasn't in the right position. It was misaligned. So they started checking, and one of the employees, he went to check the electrical controls and stuff, but they couldn't find any problem with it. The training officer, he attempted to notify the deputy chief that the man lift had operated or failed to operate, something that happened, but there was radio problems. So the transmission really didn't get through. Of course, we're standing inside of a metal building, even if the chief is 100 feet or 150 feet away, sometimes, and all that machinery and everything else, you can have problems. We were operating off of a repeater system on the radios, so you had to hit a repeater 3 miles away or 4 miles away to get out, or switch it around to talk around. Don't know exactly if that radio had been switched or not, but we tried to make sure that everybody had good communications, because everybody did have radios at that time. But after they found out that the manway had stopped and the electricals checked out, and there was another employee that started climbing the emergency ladder up the side to get up there. So it took a little bit of time for him to get up there. Once he got to the top, he seen that Tim was pinned, and he immediately went over to the edge of the outside of the building, over the man lift, and he started calling back to the people down below that they had a problem, that there was an injury or something, but they just couldn't hear him. And he realized that, and he went back and he found Tim's radio, and he picked it up and immediately called firefighter down. At the time, whenever the deputy chief called for the ladder truck, I said, well, maybe I better head that way, since I was City Hall. And I just walked out the door of City Hall and was crossing the street when I heard that firefighter down, and I go, well, listen, I didn't need to hear that. But when they heard that, my deputy chief, he automatically sent the captain that was in charge of safety. He had went in right behind the training officer and Tim, and he and a captain from a ladder truck he assigned them to go to the top and see what happened, see if they could find out what was going on. The duty captain, he started to climb the ladder. About 3/4 of the way up, he was just worn out. I mean, it was a stiff and a hard climb. But he had just worn out and couldn't go any farther. But the captain from the ladder truck, he continued to make the climb and got up to the top floor where he found Tim, was wedged in between the belt and the platform at the top. The SCBA had hit against the bottom of the opening, and it just basically folded Tim up. But the captain, he checked for vital signs, tried to do chest compression, but in the position that Tim was in, it was just hard to get him. And it had been some time, from the time that Tim had got there, and by the time everybody got up to him, we knew the situation. One of the other EMTs, or an EMT, and there was an engineer. He started climbing the ladder and was on the 3rd level, and he called to the ladder captain. He says, if you needed any assistance, and the captain called back down that Tim was DOA on the scene. EMT, he continued to climb to the top, and when he got up there, he helped with the captain, checking for vital signs and stuff, but there was nothing there. I got to the scene about at 1:36. The deputy chief, he advised me of the situation, gave me a briefing on what had been done. At that point, we started an incident within an incident. Additional mutual aid was called from Fallen Fire Department, which is about 25 miles north of us. They have had a 100-foot aerial. We also requested med flight from one of the local hospitals just to stand by if we needed them. But med flight went ahead and launched, sent an helicopter down to the incident to stand by in case anything else happened. I went ahead and started climbing the tower. On the way up, I met the duty captain. He was distraught. He basically advised me that we had lost Tim. I went ahead and got to the top, seen what was going on, met with the EMT and the ladder cap, and we called for the county coroner. We called for the state fire marshal's office to respond to the scene, since fire marshal does the investigations on line of duty deaths. So we wanted to make sure we had the bases covered. We called for some additional equipment so we could get the scene documented as quickly as we could. We put people at the electrical control panels down at the bottoms to make sure nobody tampered or nobody used or switched or did anything with basically a lockout, tag out on the equipment. And then after I got everything documented, we had to raise the equipment what we was using. We had to get a rope and get the equipment up to it to where we could work with it. But after we got everything documented, I took the camera and stuff back down to the ground and met with the deputy chief and the members of the department. By that time, additional mutual aid from Reddings Mill Fire Department, which is another full-time, part-time department, full-time personnel as well as volunteers. Their fire chief and the deputy chief had both arrived on the scene. They'd also brought their departmental chaplain with them. like I said, they had already requested additional people and equipment from their department to basically relieve our crews from the fire, which was a great deal. We made a transfer of command where we handed it over to them. The camera and the documentation we had taken from the top, I turned it over to our law enforcement, basically just for evidential purpose. After the arrival of the Joplin aerial, we were able to get the county coroner and a couple of representatives from the state fire marshal's office up to the top of the tower. Then they worked with the ladder captain or our ladder captain to help in Tim's recovery. All of Tim's equipment, his SCBA, his PPE, his pass alarm, everything was turned over to the county coroner to hold on for just basically evidence, you know, if anything was questioned or anything like that. Then comes the hard part. Myself and a fellow engineer, the one that Tim was working with the excavation company, he and I and the chaplain from Redding's Mill, we went to Tim's house to notify his family. His brother and sister-in-law were at home, but Tim's wife and the children weren't. The kids were still in school, but they were headed home. His sister-in-law, she was able to contact his wife by phone and told her to come home, that somebody needed to meet with her. About that time, the kids started arriving on the bus. They sent them into the house, and we kind of stayed outside until Tim's wife, Misty, come home. Yeah, kind of a hard day. The original cause was they were working on the tower on the silo, and a cutting torch or a spark that got there from the welding operation, got inside the bin, was the initial cause of the fire. Yeah, I you know, back in 2000, I was attending some training at the National Fire Academy, and I had the opportunity to sit through a Fallen Firefighters. You know, what would, you know, the training class that the international, or not the international, but the Fallen Firefighters put together back in 2000. At that time, I was just a captain. You know, I really didn't think about being chief, but you know, it kind of set everything in motion. You know, I didn't think, you know, I would ever use it, but the training, just the short, I think it was like 4 hours or something like that, a little presentation, you know, gets you to thinking about things that you need to do. I guess that's about as much as I can say about that incident and about that day right now. That everything worked out. We had lots of support from the fire departments, the other fire departments that come in with Redding's Mill. The area down here in the southwest corner, we have a group of fire chiefs. We call the Ozark Gateway Fire Chiefs. And within that organization, they sparked a Chisholm group, a support group of chaplains and stuff to help with departments. That particular kind of stemmed from another incident that a firefighter a year before, about a year and a half before, that happened. In a volunteer town or a volunteer department north of Neosho in Diamond, Missouri. They had a restaurant fire. And the city of Carthage, which is a little bit farther north, they responded as mutual aid along with our department in Neosho. Firefighters went in for attack and investigation, and one of the Carthage firefighters, name was Steve Fierro. Steve, he had an uncle, much like Tim. That worked on the Carthage Fire Department. So he really couldn't be on that department until his uncle retired. But Steve wanted to be a firefighter, so he came to Neosho. And I was fortunate enough to have Steve on my shift. Worked with him for about 3 years. His uncle retired. So Steve left our department and went to Carthage. He also, I kind of got him sucked into the wildland side of it. We were fortunate enough to make an out-of-state fire call to Florida in 1994 in Daytona. Spent 3 weeks down there on a fire. So he got the wildland fire bug as well as I did. But Steve was quite an individual. But with his incident, or with that incident, the Gateway Chiefs brought in the Chisholm and brought in the support group for the firefighters and for the fire departments. So that was a blessing in itself. I'm not going to apologize. I've been known to wear my heart on my sleeve.
Chief, no need to apologize. Truly appreciate you sharing this with us.
But no, it affects everyone. Like I said, it's been 15 years since this incident. And, this is the first time. You know, there's in the history of firefighters and myself and other fire chiefs and other incidents, it doesn't matter whether you're a firefighter, a fire chief, anybody that's involved with a firefighter line of fatality or a line of duty death, it's always there. We set it back, you know, there's not a day that I don't drive the streets of Neosho or the area, or even go down the interstate past this mill that I don't think about. Well, I've been there, I've done this, I've done that. I've seen this, I saved that, I lost this. We lost children, we lost people. I had a car accident here. I had a car accident there. There's not a time that we don't think about those things. I know it. Every firefighter does it. Then whenever you start thinking about those things, I like to say the little worms come working their way out of the woods, and we handle them the best we can. The one thing that I've found is whenever I start having bad thoughts, you can't keep them down. The best thing you can do is turn around and think about the good times, the good things that happen, the times that you enjoyed spending with those individuals, like Tim sitting up around the table in the morning, shooting a breeze. We had a rule around the fire station. We had an old wooden oak table. It was a round table, and usually whatever was said around the round table stayed at the round table. It was just, just one of those things that tradition had carried on for years. And like even at Steve in Florida, whenever I get thinking about his incident, I drive past the restaurant, I think about it. But I think about the good times, the times that we spent together on a shift, the times that I spent together with him on a Florida trip, on a wildland fire. I think about the attitudes of the individuals, Tim and Steve both. They're firefighters. We always have that, well, I'm the macho guy, I'm going to show the young volunteer how it's done. We're going to suck a little bit more heat. We're going to suck a little bit more smoke, just to kind of, I guess, kind of prove to the younger guys that we still got it. I find myself doing that still today. But you recognize those things with those traces within the individuals. I don't know how many times I sat across the table from Tim and I'd look into his eyes. He had a set of eyes that you just can't, the eyes of a person, see this, you can see their soul, and he had those eyes. I've even looked at some of the pictures his daughter, both of his daughters, sent to our department for their graduations, and those eyes are still there.
You want to switch over to the pictures and walk us through the pictures?
Yeah, let's go ahead.
All right. There's a couple things to clarify what you had in there. So this was the grain bin itself?
Yeah, the one on the right, the large one,
Yep.
that little cabin or the cabin on top where the one circle is, that's the top of the man lift, where you had to go in. And then after you got there was a cat or a walkway between that and the smaller bin on the left that you had to go across to get over to it. And that other location, that was where the fire was located down in the one bin there on it. We're looking from the south back to the north at this point. It's back from a distance of maybe quarter of a mile, probably. It's been zoomed in, but it's some distance. There's a railroad track that runs along the south side of the mill itself. The railroad track runs east-west somewhere. But that's the mill. I think in the larger bin, that one there on there, there's like 10 or 12 bins inside of it that they use to hold produce or product that they lower down into the mixing plant down below, and it's down in the bottom of that one where they mix the products and send it out as feed. Okay.
Then we have the man lift.
That's the man lift. 16-inch belt. It's got a footboard on it. Shows the safety cable. They're starting the top cable, runs from the top to the bottom, and then the handhold on the top of it. We know within our own district, we know that that's there. A state, another instructor in the state of Missouri worked with the University of Missouri Fire Rescue Training. A lot of agricultural training programs. Name was John Sation. And he heard about our incident and wanted to do a little bit of a follow-up about man lifts. And he started designing a class. I met with him at summer fire school. We talked about the incident. We talked about the man lift. And he mentioned to me that he had contacted some of the departments within the state that had these old feed mills. And they got to talking about the man lift. And some of them didn't know what the man lift was. They had them. They never had the opportunity or never realized that they had them or even used them. But he did bring some awareness within the state that these things are out there. John passed a few years ago, and I don't know exactly how many or if the class ever really evolved. But like I said, in the northern part of Missouri, the agricultural area of the state, here down here in the south end, we're a lot of agriculture, but it's like chicken produce, turkeys, not so much flat land. We got a lot more rock. But we do have grain bins and we do have grain silos. They're not as big as some of those that you see back in the east. There are not as many of them, but they are still out there. Okay, and go on.
Clearance for where the clearance is.
That is the opening, and like I said, not much. This mill was built back in the 1930s. Since that time, new man lifts design has come about. That opening, if you look at it, is not supposed to be less than 24 inches. But since the mill has been in operation since about 1930s, there have not been any retrofits. There have not been any changes in the man lift. It's, like I said, it's not supposed to be less than 24 or more than 28. That's 20 inches. There's only about 4 inches there. You can picture a firefighter. Did you pull the one picture with, you didn't pull the picture with the cylinder, the air cylinder?
No.
Okay. You put a man in full bunkers with an air pack on the back. Like I said, these things are manufactured to move personnel, plant personnel up and down. In the previous incidents, I guess by the grace of God, we just didn't have an incident then. If we did, it didn't happen. But you put a firefighter on that with an SCBA on the back, you can see there's not much clearance. And that was one of the things that I mentioned, the air cylinder. The air cylinder that Tim had on was a 2,200 pound, 2216 pound air cylinder, 30-minute air cylinder. It had a flat bottom. And as he was coming up, that flat bottom came in contact with that angle iron that supported that platform underneath. About 2 inches of that air cylinder made that contact, and it didn't slide. And that's what basically caught Tim and forced him, just kind of folded him up, pushed him into the belt and into the metal structure on the belt or on the man lift itself. But that was the biggest thing, I think. If it had been a different air cylinder, he may have survived. It's a toss up, you know. We do some strange things and we go to strange places. You never know what's going to reach out and bite. But that 2-inch flat bottom air cylinder got bit by a 3-inch piece of angle iron. So, okay.
All righty, thanks. Well over 15 years since the incident. What do you want today's firefighters to know about this incident?
Don't take anything for granted. You know, pre-plan, know what you've got in your community, know what's in your response area. We used to take the guys out. We'd do a walk around in buildings. We didn't do inspections. We just did walk arounds. We would get with business owners, say, we'd like to come take a walk around, look at your building. You know, every day you drive past the front of a building, but you really don't know what's in the back or on top of or underneath. We weren't there to enforce any fire codes, more or less public relations, and make sure that our firefighters knew what we had within our community, because, you know, Neosho, it's 125, almost 150 years old. We've got some old buildings that have been added on to, removed, modified, firewalls breached, stuff like that. Inside the city, we do have building codes. Outside the city, there are no codes. But know what you've got in your community. Know what you've got within your response area. Just be extra cautious. You know, if I've often thought, you know, we should have made games out of some of this stuff instead of, you know, calling it training, to take these guys out and take them into a building and say, how many man pits, how many man falls, how many hang-ups, how many different places could you get into trouble? I know being a training officer in the fire service, you know, you look for different ways of getting into a firefighter's head other than sitting him down in front of a PowerPoint to get them to learn. But never take anything for granted. And get out and see the community, know your response area, get your hands dirty, you know, meet people. Firefighters, we've changed, equipment has changed over the years. I wish we had some of the stuff we've got now back 15 years ago. Being a small community, it's hard. You've got a budget to live with. You got to stretch that budget as far as you can. You got to try and keep people healthy. You have to live within your means. So, you know, sometimes you just have to look for things, and you have to live with the things you've got until you can do better. But it doesn't matter whether you're a fire chief or a firefighter, an engineer, you know. I know I've seen a lot of things come about within the fire department. Well, I've seen this on such and such a video, or I've seen this on such and such a post, or, you know, I think we can build one of these, you know. Necessity is the mother of invention, you know, so. But just don't take anything for granted for the firefighters that are growing up, and for the chiefs, anybody.
What kind of changes were implemented in the agency after this, or the area for these types of incidents?
Say again.
What kind of changes were implemented in the agency, the area, that kind of stuff after this?
You know, like I said, the recovery takes time. I figured we lost about a full year after Tim's incident. We had some older volunteers that had left the department that I guess they felt that they need to come back to the community and back to the fire department. They came back. They was with us for a while, and then they left again. Get that kind of sense of belonging to something, or making a commitment to your department. One of the biggest things too, that with Tim's incident, and I've got to say, probably every fire department that's lost a firefighter, you know, firefighters, we always sit around the table or sit across the table around the bay floor. You know, we talk about what bothers us. We talk it out amongst ourselves. We visit with each other. Lots of times we don't take things home, just to keep it out of our own home. But don't forget the wives. We did offer the wives a incident stress management debrief, if you want to call it that. We brought in some of the chaplains to sit with the wives or talk with the wives, visit with the wives. I can't remember how many wives showed up. We had it at the fire station. It may have not been the best place to have it. We should have maybe had it outside the fire station, let them kind of pick the location to where they can sit down, wife to wife, ask questions. I've been married almost 50 years. My wife has put up with a lot of stuff, but you know, we can't forget them. It affects them probably as much, if not more, than the firefighters, because they don't have a group that they can sit down and visit with every third shift or every morning at the coffee. So it's something that we don't need to forget. Like I said, one of the things probably that we probably could have done, maybe help some of the wives, Steve's wife, Steve Farrell's wife. I believe she did talk to Misty after Tim's incident. But she knows what a wife has to go through. She went through that. But to give the wives, you know, someone that they might be able to talk to. I know with my wife, she had questions. Whenever my first trip out of state, she put up with it. She didn't like it, but like around the fire station, you know, she realized that I'm out doing something and I've got a lot of people around me. It's just like in the fire station, you've got people around you that will support you and take care of you and look after you, looking after each other. But that's probably one of the most important things I can think of, is that looking back, that, you know, we might have improved on and might have done a little bit better, was to take care of our wives and significant others, you know, because they also have emotions and feelings that have to be handled during that time. Within the department, you know, we're kind of, like I said, we're a small department. We're strapped with funding. You're trying to do the best you can. We were fortunate enough. This incident happened in 2005. In 2008, we received a fire grant. And with that fire grant, we were able to replace all of our SCBAs. We had a mixture of steel cylinders, aluminum cylinders. We had a couple of different brands. Well, no, we had a couple of different makes. This may have been the same or different models from one manufacturer of SCBA, but we were able to replace all of that. We went from a 30-minute bottle to a 45-minute bottle, a 4,500 PSI bottle. The new SCBAs had automatic or integrated pass alarms that were automatically activated whenever you turn the air cylinder on. We thought that was a great thing. Biggest thing, though, we got rid of all of those flat bottom cylinders. This year or last year, the fire department was fortunate enough to get another SCBA grant, which replaced all of those air cylinders back in 2008, and all of those SCBAs with even newer equipment and newer technology integrated into those packs. We got with the NIOSH when it came in, we were kind of knocked with our communications equipment. Here again, we were using different radio systems, walkie-talkies. Now we've got new upgraded radios. The city has been working on doing a trunking system for the entire city. We're doing a trunking system within the state, so we're trying to get that stuff up and going. The portables we now have, or the guys now have the emergency call buttons on them with the radio ID, so that helps. Of course, whenever we got the new SCBAs, we phased out all of the old pass alarms. We did hold on a few of those pass alarms, you know, for the guys if we went out on natural cover fires or something like that, they could carry if they needed. Ladder truck, like I said, it was 75 foot. It met its service life for the city. City purchased a new aerial, and the ladder truck, the 75 foot, was basically the third aerial we had. We started out with a 75, we went to 100. Those were used equipment. Purchased a new 75 foot. It has now been replaced with a new 100-foot aerial. We've worked on mutual aid agreements, and we've worked with mutual aid agencies. We went to another small town south of us. We did some target hazard. We had some structures down there that were their target hazards. We went down there for mutual aid purposes to see what we could offer if the situation come about that they had a fire in those deal. I said the captain, you know, as he was climbing the tower, he got fatigued. We were able to get some physical fitness equipment, promote better physical fitness for the firefighters within the department. You know, we tried to, you know, increase the amount of time that the guys spent actually out in the community, seeing what we had to kind of better protect ourselves and familiarize us with the department or with the area. Let's see, what else can I say? I can't think of anything else right now.
Well, that's quite a few improvements that were made.
Yeah, you know, and some of them weren't cheap. You know, whenever you talk about, excuse me, whenever you talk about an aerial truck, $1 million, you know, that's, you don't walk out and buy it off a car lot, you know. And the 2008 grant we got for SCBAs, that was over $250,000 or $250,000. You know, we were fortunate enough to be able to replace some old SCBAs. We look for grants. There's not a whole lot of fire grants out there. You know, there are some companies that offer support. You know, you can buy small things like IR, infrared. That's something else we also added to our department to put on the apparatus. I think we've got like 4 of them now, 3 or 4 of them on our apparatus, not only with the city, but in the district. You know, it's an expensive business to be in. Whenever you say fire service, somebody, you know, they always say that the price goes up, but there's a lot of stuff that's involved in that fire equipment. It takes the money to do it.
Yep. Excellent. I'd like to finish with, you know, the tribute. What you mentioned, we had talked about a private business that created a vehicle for that. And we got some pictures of, you can walk us through that. So
yeah, if you want to put them up, and while they're up, We have a local trucking company, CFI, which is owned and operated locally here in Neosho. In 2016, they hired a retired firefighter who was an over-the-road trucker. He used to be up in northern parts of the United States. He started here in Missouri, and he started here with the Seneca Area Fire Protection District, or Seneca Rural, as a firefighter, and I think he was even an officer. And then he went to work and driving truck, and he moved up into northern United States. He decided to come back home to Neosho, or back down here in this area. And CFI, he went to work for CFI, the trucking company. And in 2016, he started, I guess, kind of presenting the idea to the trucking company about dedicating a truck to honor firefighters. He and his wife, both are drivers, but they wanted to do something. So he started the design program and the process, and he approached the president and the vice president of the company about it, and they jumped on it. Fact is, the company not only had one, I think they've got another truck that they kind of let the drivers pick and choose. We've got Kansas City Chiefs trucks, we've got football trucks and everything else, but they jumped on this one wholeheartedly. Randy Rodgers is the individual's name. Like I said, he and his wife, they work for the trucking company. His boss, one of his bosses, is my neighbor, lives across the road from where I live. But he had the idea, and this truck was the first one. Right now, he's working on his second one. This particular truck you're looking at, I believe that one went 400 and some thousand miles before it finally gave up the ghost. But his new one's a little bit more decked out. Travels throughout the United States. People see this thing from all over. It's been featured in national magazine, trucking magazines. That particular picture, I believe, was taken in front of one of the locations of firefighters, wildland firefighters fatalities. It gets out on the road. It travels throughout the United States. It's been at car shows. It's been at parades. I talked to Randy last night. He said he's been invited to another community that lost a fire chief last year, and they're going to put his name on the truck as well. So, but Randy, he was a wildland firefighter. He worked as a hotshot, and then he was also on the fire department. And he dedicated it primarily to start out with for 3 firefighters, local firefighters. You want to go ahead and visit the back of it? Yeah. Kind of hard to see, but up to the top. There you go. You'll see Tim's name. You'll see Steve Fierro and Tyler Casey. Tyler, line of duty death here in our county with the Seneca Area Fire Protection District, or Seneca Rural Fire Protection District. He was killed during a tornado. By a tornado. His department responded out as weather watchers during storms and stuff. And he happened to be at a location where the tornado was rain wrapped. They couldn't see it coming, and it hit his location. That particular tornado killed, I believe it was 10 people at that one location where he was at. But that's what Randy did, is he dedicated that truck in honor of those firefighters. And like I said, he's also done it with the couple of the wildland crews, as well as another wildland firefighter from the area that was killed on an incident in California.
That's pretty moving there. That is really, especially for a private business to do that. It's pretty impressive. So, Chief, I can't thank you enough for sharing with us. We got some comments coming through here. Just appreciate the willingness and the courage to share that. The betterment of the fire service, not only what happened on the incident, but how this affects people. That some of these things are getting across is the effect on people. I appreciate you bringing up the program you went to. I'll put a plug in for it. It's Taking Care of Our Own program. And it's the idea of it is to prepare departments and individuals for a serious injury or a line of duty death. We'll bring the program out to you. We have a grant right now that will bring that to you free of charge. You can go on the website, firehero.org, and get to the Taking Care of Our Own. And I coordinate all those, and we're trying to get classes out as many part of the countries as we can. So if you're interested in that, it's an incredible class. Chief spoke to it. You never think it's going to happen to you, but probably 100 people a year say that. So
I hate to interrupt you, but
no,
like I said, my mind gets running. I kind of forgot something too, because we were talking about silo. We were talking about silo itself. University of Missouri, they received a grant a few years ago, and they developed a training program here in the state of Missouri to work with grain bin incidents. It's a 40-foot trailer that they can take throughout the state. They have a group of training individuals that operate the trailer. And it's quite a piece of equipment for a simulator. They actually have the produce that they can get in there. Let's talk about confined space, talk about different types of equipment. They work with the University of Missouri Extension Service, which deals with agriculture and stuff. And also with the Missouri Farmers Association, known as the MFA here in the state of Missouri. They also help sponsor some education for firefighters and doing agricultural type incidents. So if there's any firefighters from the state of Missouri or anywhere else, they can get a hold of the university and see what's available in their area or maybe other states to see what's out there.
Sounds like a good program. Absolutely. So, well, Chief, that concludes it for us. Again, thank you very much. Truly appreciate your willingness to share your story with us and what happened. And thanks. This will really have a positive impact on the fire service. So, please join us the fourth Thursday, be in June, and we'll do the next NFF Connect series. So thank you all for joining us for the special edition, and hope you all have a great day. Take care. See ya.